The moment arrived with brutal clarity. Jin sat in silence as the doctor's words cut through the air, and Jungkook, seated beside him, froze in disbelief. The diagnosis had just been delivered, and it carried implications neither of them had prepared for. Why did the medical team describe the situation with such gravity? And why did Jin's reaction, followed by Jungkook's visible shock, leave the entire room shaken? This was not an ordinary hospital consultation. The urgency with which Jin had been examined in Los Angeles already hinted at something more serious than routine care. His schedule, his presence in recent events, and whispers of fatigue had all fueled speculation. But what unfolded inside that clinical room went beyond public assumptions. The doctors, after conducting their evaluations, spoke with a tone that silenced the atmosphere completely. Their words were measured, precise, and devastating in their weight. For Jin, hearing the diagnosis was described as a moment of profound shock. His expression reportedly changed instantly, shifting from controlled composure to a look of disbelief and unease. The doctor's words were not what he expected. The term complications was introduced, a term no patient wants to hear, especially one whose life has been dictated by discipline, performance, and physical endurance. For Jungkook, sitting just a few feet away, the reaction was immediate. He stared at the doctors in visible confusion, then turned to Jin, as if needing confirmation that he had heard correctly. What exactly was said that triggered such a response? Sources from inside the hospital indicate that the doctors revealed a condition that had developed quietly, but now required urgent and careful attention. It was not merely exhaustion or stress, though both had been contributing factors. The diagnosis pointed to something more complex, something that could not be dismissed with rest alone. The phrasing of the doctor's explanation carried a warning. If ignored, the risks would multiply. Jin's shock was not just medical, it was personal. He has built his career on resilience, on presenting strength no matter the circumstance. To be told by experts that his body demanded limits was not only unexpected, but almost unbearable. Those who witnessed the scene said his hands trembled slightly as he absorbed the details, his eyes fixed on the table rather than the doctor's, as though avoiding the weight of their words. Jungkook, meanwhile, reacted with open disbelief. He questioned the doctors repeatedly, pressing them for clarity, demanding to know if the condition was truly as serious as it sounded. His tone carried both fear and resistance, as if hoping that by challenging the words, he could undo them. Yet the doctors remained firm. Their explanation did not waver, and the more they detailed the situation, the clearer it became that denial was no longer possible. The shock of that moment reverberated through the hospital. Staff members who were nearby reported that the usually professional atmosphere felt heavy, even suffocating. Nurses whispered among themselves, describing the tension in the consultation room as unlike anything they had seen. The image of Jin sitting in stunned silence, while Jungkook leaned forward in disbelief, captured the reality of what had just unfolded. Why did this diagnosis carry such force? Because it dismantled the assumption that Jin's health was under control. Fans had seen him smiling, performing, appearing strong, but the medical evidence told a different story. The doctors spoke not of temporary strain, but of ongoing complications that required long-term management. The implication was undeniable. Continuing without adjustment could lead to consequences far more severe. For Jungkook, hearing this beside Jin intensified the weight of the moment. He has often looked to Jin as a source of guidance and stability, and to watch him confronted with vulnerability was emotionally crushing. His reaction, first shock, then a desperate attempt to gather every detail, reflected not only his worry but also his role as someone unwilling to let Jin face the truth alone. Witnesses described that after the initial explanation, Jungkook stood briefly, pacing the small room before returning to his seat. His hands were clenched, his breathing unsteady, his face pale. The doctors continued to outline treatment steps, but the words hung heavily in the air. Both Jin and Jungkook remained visibly shaken, caught between disbelief and the harsh reality presented before them. The moment was made more devastating by the language used. Doctors reportedly emphasized the word monitoring repeatedly, highlighting that the situation was not a single event, but an ongoing concern. This meant restrictions, changes, and vigilance, things that Jin, known for his relentless work ethic, might struggle to accept. His shock was not only at the medical facts, but at what they demanded of him, a reevaluation of the way he lived, performed, and pushed himself. Jungkook's visible distress underscored the severity. Those present said he covered his face briefly, as if trying to compose himself, before lowering his hands and focusing again on the doctors. His refusal to break down completely showed his determination, but the weight in his eyes was unmistakable. He was not just a bystander. He was a brother-like figure forced to confront a truth that shook him to the core. As news of the hospital visit spread beyond its walls, speculation only grew. Why was Jin shocked by the diagnosis? Why did Jungkook react with such disbelief? What exactly had been revealed that brought the atmosphere to such a tense breaking point? The details remain closely guarded, but the emotional reactions of those present spoke louder than any official statement could. Something significant had been uncovered, something that forced even the strongest to falter. By the end of the consultation, Jin remained quiet, his shock still visible in his expression. Jungkook, though still unsettled, took on the role of asking about next steps, treatment options, recovery time, risks, and the exact precautions required. His determination to understand every angle reflected not only his worry, but also his need to act, to protect Jin from the consequences of ignoring the diagnosis. The doctors, professional but visibly aware of the emotional toll, provided what details they could. Their emphasis was clear. The situation was manageable, but only with discipline and vigilance. For Jin, hearing that his future demanded limits was an almost unbearable blow. For Jungkook, realizing the fragility behind Jin's strength was a shock he could not hide. The question now lingers. What exactly did the doctors reveal that left Jin in shock and Jungkook in disbelief? The truth remains behind closed doors, but one fact is undeniable. The diagnosis carried a weight that neither of them expected, and its impact will not fade quickly. The image of Jin's silent shock and Jungkook's stunned reaction will remain a lasting reminder that even the strongest faces can conceal vulnerabilities too heavy to ignore.